Welcome down to Musoplex today, Mark, from Iron Man Records. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming down. So how's things with you?
Today, everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
It's raining and it's not -10, so I feel pretty good.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how cold it is, and you were saying that it's not quite as cold as Belgium.
Yeah, and Antwerp was quite cold while I was there. But
you've just come back off tour, haven't you, with one of the bands you're playing?
Yeah, I've just come back from Europe with Police Bastard, and hopefully I'm releasing their new recordings on Iron Man Records in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, the tour went all over Europe. I think it was about 12 shows the band played, and it started in Belgium, went to Germany, ended up in Holland, and then came back to Birmingham.
So did you have quite a good following in Europe with Police Bastard as a band?
Yeah, I mean the band had been going for a long time, and you know, I played in various bands over the years, and old bands that I was in, we played with Police Bastard, and I've organised shows for them in the past. Yeah. But yeah, a couple of years ago, Trogg, the original bass player from the band, he got really ill, and sadly his illness was terminal. So the last year of his life was spent putting the band back together with a view to touring, and Trogg and the band went to Europe and recorded a live album in Frankfurt, and then sadly last year Trogg died. So so the band has been pretty much a labour of love with new members of the band who've known the band for years or whatever. Sure. And we've been trying to take the band out to Europe to visit the places that Trogg, you know, enjoyed going to and was inspired by. And yeah, the new recordings are coming out on Iron Man. So so Police Bastard are a little bit different to most bands that I've worked with in that it's much more of a labour of love, and you know, really to keep alive the memory of Trogg. Yeah. So when we went to Europe this year, Pid, who was the original singer in the band, he was quite keen. The band went to Germany and visited some of the places that Trogg had been in before.
Trogg's memory, yeah.
You know, starting in a band at 14, I used to tape trade, which is another thing that, you know, has probably been forgotten about completely. Yeah. I used to get these stupid sort of, you know, metal magazines or rock magazines, and in the back they always had like these adverts, like little free adverts for people saying, oh yeah, I'm into this band and I live here, and write to me and I'll send you a live tape. Yeah. So my teenage years was spent swapping tapes with people all around the world. Oh, and I was trading with people in Brazil and Portugal, Japan, and a load of people in Birmingham as well. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Birmingham, because a lot of the people I was tape trading with lived in Birmingham. And yeah, the tape trading thing just became a serious habit. I couldn't stop doing it, and I was just getting all these tapes from all over the world, and it opened my eyes to different music, different types of music. And bands that I'd never find in the local record shop, you know, in Birmingham or whatever. I was getting sent to me from different parts of the world. Yeah. So so that really fired my interest in music. And then, you know, I carried on playing in bands, and I moved to Birmingham in 1990 and started organising shows for bands. And again, you know, the tape trading thing was dying a death, because CDs and computers and things were just starting to exert an influence. And I used to organise shows under the name of Badger Promotions in Birmingham. Okay. And I did that for about 10 years. I used to organise shows, you know, twice a week, every week. I did it for 10 years, so I must have organised shows, probably over 1,000 shows or something over 10 years, and it drove me completely nuts. But, you know, it was good fun.
So is that how you kind of went on then to develop your label? Because
that was pretty much where I got to, and then I realised that, you know, doing the live shows was one thing, but what I really wanted to do was help bands escape from the West Midlands. A lot of the bands that I was working with at the time, all they were doing was playing shows in the West Midlands, rehearsing, playing at the local pub, and dreaming of being in a band, but they never toured, they never left the West Midlands.
Still goes on to a degree though, doesn't it, with local bands? I've noticed a few of the bands I go and see, they've got a massive following in the Midlands, but then they don't seem to then kind of extend outside that comfort zone. Is that something you find working with bands as well?
Well, you know, all bands are different, but a lot of bands that I've come across have a naive hope that, you know, if they're really good at what they do and they stay in the West Midlands, that somehow somebody's going to discover them and it's all going to be easy for them. But I mean, the thing that inspired me to start the record label is these bands were coming in from different parts of the world, particularly this band from Poland, whose name I can't even pronounce, but in English it means cross or crucified. But they were on a small independent label, which I also can't pronounce, from Poland. And, you know, they sent their CD to me in the post with a really badly written letter saying, you know, we'd like to play in England, can you put us on? And I listened to the music and I thought, well, if they want to come to England, of course I'm going to put them on.
Making a lot of effort.
And, you know, people complain that they've got to get on a bus and go half a mile down the road to see a band that just happens to have come all the way from Poland to play.
There's got to be some respect there, hasn't there, if they've made that effort. And I'm sure you experienced that when you went on tour and you, as an English band, went and kind of played in Europe.
And when the band turned up, they were probably no different to any local band in Birmingham. But the difference was they'd made a record and they'd written a letter and they'd made a connection.
Sure.
So that really inspired me to start the record label and try and get some of the bands in the West Midlands to record something, and then try and, you know, working with the bands, try and encourage them to put together a network of contacts or a list of contacts they could work with to get shows. And some of the bands have toured, some of the bands have split up.
Sure.
Some of the bands are still in the West Midlands, but yeah, I like to think that you know, in its own little way, Iron Man Records has helped some bands in the West Midlands get out and do things other than just play in the local pub.
Communication is a powerful tool, lead towards a common goal. Wanna know that people care, but they treat you like a fool.
Really, the bands that I found interesting were bands that had no interest in doing anything other than for themselves, and by that, you know, bands that were playing music that they liked and didn't really care whether other people liked it or not. They just played what they felt they were comfortable with, and they expressed themselves honestly. And to me, I've always felt that that's really what music's all about. It's not about trying to write music that you hope people will like. Because if you're in the West Midlands and you write a song that everyone in the West Midlands like, and then you go and play in Germany, the people in Germany are going to be completely different.
It is true.
So, you know, the bands that just did things for themselves in their own time, in their own way, were the bands that I found interesting.
Sure.
The record label was never about commercial success. It was really just about trying to help the bands do it for themselves. And, you know, for example, the Nightingales, Robert Lloyd, the singer, as far as I understand it, he left the music industry 20 years ago saying he wanted nothing more to do with it, and he was sick of it all, and he had no interest in the music industry anymore. And 20 years later he approached me and said, look, you know, I'd like to make a record. The band has its roots in Birmingham, you're a record label, you have your roots in Birmingham, we should work together and do something. And, you know, I made a record with the Nightingales, and from that they managed to generate enough interest in the band from press, from gigs, They got an invite to tour Europe, an invite to tour America. They then went on to make connections with other record labels, and they've released, I think they've released 2 more records since working with me, and they've got a number of other projects that they're working on for release later this year.
Yeah.
So Iron Man Records, in all of that, wasn't owning or controlling the Nightingales, it was just giving them a bit of help at a critical time so
like
they could move on and do their thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Tell me a bit about Dufus, just how you found them, or just what it's like working with them.
Well, Dufus. The simple explanation is Dufus are from New York, and it's a singer-songwriter called Seth, who leads the songwriting and the lyric writing in the band. And the band consists of whoever is available at the time. So sometimes the band has 2 or 3 members, sometimes the band has 20. Sometimes they perform on stage with 50 or more, and if you look them up on the internet and you look at the past members in the band, there's been some really interesting people who've played in the band over the years, who've gone on to be successful in their own right. Yeah. But Seth has just been the mainstay of the band from the very start. Sure. And I've lost count how many records he's made. It's got to be like 16, 17. 18 or 19, I don't know, maybe more albums. And he seems to churn out an album a year as standard, sometimes 2 or 3.
People keep ripping me off. I know I can't prove it, but I can do it. The reason I blew it is somebody threw it. The towel, the whole game. They took the money maker and ran. They took the money maker and ran. I know I can't prove it, but I can do it. They took my money maker. They took my money maker. They took my money maker and ran. They took my money maker and ran. They took my money maker. They took my money maker. They took my money maker and ran. They took my money maker and ran. And I rode on my side. There's a mess to make. And I rode on my side.
Signing the band to a label was not the goal. What I wanted to do was just help the band out by releasing a record at a critical time. So again, Seth managed to self-release an album called This Revolution. Yeah. And I think he pressed 1,000 copies, sold them all himself. Yeah. Then he had a record called Newborns that he wanted to release. And at the time I didn't have any money, so I said, well, look, Seth, there's not a lot I can do, but come back to me at a later date and I'll see what I can do to help out. He got some friends of the band to help him release an album called 131, which then got picked up by Raw Records, who worked with Lee Scratch Perry and worked with Bad Brains and some really big bands as well. Yeah. And Raw did another album with Seth called Baller Design, and that was released as a full Dufus record. And in the meantime, I managed to get some money together, so I agreed to release Newborns for Seth, just to make sure that the album wasn't lost. And I also released a brand new record that Seth was working on at the time, which was called The Last Class Blast. And I still think it's one of the band's best records they've ever made. Sure. And again, it hasn't sold a lot of copies, but the people who bought it have just loved it. Right. And again, I'm not interested in spending thousands of pounds on marketing and promotion. I'd rather let the bands tour and grow their fan base organically, and do what they feel comfortable with. I don't like the idea of pushing bands into, well, we've got 3 months to promote your record, and then you've got to tour for 7 years, and you got to produce another 5 albums in the meantime. I'd rather let the bands do their own thing. Yeah, absolutely. So The Last Class Blast is still available, and since then I think in the last couple of years, Seth's produced another 3 or 4 albums.
So people need to go online and check out.
Yeah, and
Dufus,
he's done another couple of. He's done another record called In Monstrous Attitude on Raw Records.
Yeah.
He did an album called King Astronaut, which he released himself. And there's a couple of other reissues of some old records that he's released. He's done an album of work with a group of children that he works with. That there's some festival organisers that organise a festival for young people every year,
right.
And it's like a music camp. So people go and they play music, they record music, they meet people, and it's all organised for young people to encourage and inspire them to do music.
Yeah.
So Seth, worked with a load of young people to produce an album with them. So he's absolutely prolific. So again, I don't think any record label could keep up with him.
No.
So I'm just happy to do what I can, where I can.
Talking about music and the bands that you play in yourself, you've talked about Police Bastard, you've also talked about Cy Reeves. You guys are together in Last Under the Sun, aren't you?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that band.
Right. Well, Last Under the Sun started life in 2000. I think, as I said earlier on, I've played in all sorts of stupid bands over the years that have gone nowhere. And Last Under the Sun just started as the next band. We recorded an album called Windfall.
Yeah.
And that was 8 songs, and I think that was recorded in 2001 or 2002.
Yeah, I've got that album.
Turn it back, remove the poison, run along the wild flowers and streams, and then breathe as the sound of truth still whispers through these trees. I can't forgive them, no I won't forget. Hold the machines down, turn them back, and all the creatures of the forest, a million burning eyes, staring.
Last on the Sun rehearsing at the moment with a view to going back to Europe this year.
Yeah.
I've just pressed the most recent Last on the Sun album, which is called Gone, which was recorded with the old drummer Neil,
Sure.
Who sadly passed away earlier this year. But
Sorry to hear
the album, 17 songs that were actually recorded. I think they were recorded in 2005.
Right.
It's taken me a little while to get the money together to press it.
Yeah.
But now the band's got a solid lineup again, I decided it's good to press the record, get it out. And the band are working on new material, which hopefully we're going to record later this year.
Their breath is on my shoulder. I'm walking through these trees to the sound of their machines in the coldness of a summer's day. But I still dream. If I throw this cold to the bottom of the well, with one day turn, with one day, with one day, with one day. In the coldness of a summer's day, in the coldness of a summer's day, in the coldness, in the coldness, in the coldness of a summer's day.
If I was a young person in the band now, knowing what I know now, which I didn't know when I was in my teens, I'd probably say to bands, the most important thing to remember is you got to write, you got to rehearse, you got to record, and you got to perform, and you got to get that right. The music, in my view, is everything. sadly, a lot of bands that I've met believe that they can play music that everyone else likes or everyone else thinks is fashionable, and then they can start a music career, and it unfortunately doesn't work like that.
No.
Again, in my view, music is about meeting people and communicating with people and engaging people and playing to people.
Yeah.
It's not about, you know, finding a market and selling them some product. It's a you know, it's about communication.
Yeah.
And I would always encourage bands above all else, just work on your music and get that right. And if in the process you can teach yourself how to use the internet and make use of all these other things, then that's great.
Yeah.
The other thing is you just got to enjoy yourself. Too many bands, you know, find themselves playing music they don't enjoy or working with people they don't enjoy. And I think if you're not enjoying yourself, you know, what are you doing? So I'd always say to people starting a band, try and start a band with people you like, and then see how you get on. Yeah. Because you probably enjoy yourselves a lot more than working with people you don't like. That's just right. Because they're a better musician or something. When you start out with any band, there is no money. There's only bills and debts and invoices and people who need to be paid. There's never money for you or your band. No. But no, I would say that with anything, you've got to practice your craft, and there is a degree of apprenticeship that needs to be done. And if it's going to cost you money to hire a van and play a show, then you're going to have to get on with it and do it as cheaply as you can and try and make it work. Because you've got to play, you've got to tour, you've got to get out there, and if nobody's going to give you any money, you've got to do it for yourself. Sure. If you play the music you love, and you love playing your music, and it costs you a bit of money, then what's the problem? You're enjoying yourself. For sure. And if further down the line you luck out and you make some recordings or you play some shows that people appreciate, and then somebody offers you help and support, maybe you find a management company, maybe you find a record label, maybe you get some press, I don't know, maybe you sell some copies of your album, then that's all great. Yeah. But ultimately, if you're not enjoying yourself, what are you doing? Exactly.
And it seems quite important as well to break outside of your local area as well, because you mentioned earlier about bands that just play within the Midlands.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always advise bands that, if you're starting out and you've got no money, it's cheaper to try and play shows within an hour's drive of where you live. So you keep your costs to a minimum and you play as many shows as you can. I'd always say to bands, get to Europe. Yeah. Because Europe, in my view, is the playground. It's, You know, money in the United Kingdom is always bad. You don't get fed. You know, rarely get free drink or anything like that. But if you go to Europe, bands tend to get looked after much better.
Sure.
So you stand a chance of getting paid a few more euros than you would if you were in the United Kingdom. Bands tend to get fed, and they get beer, and they quite often get accommodation as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, when bands are ready, get themselves to Europe. I think that's always a good thing.
Great, that's brilliant advice. So where can people find out about Iron Man? We did talk about the internet, but people are going to want to go and have a look. So where can they find you?
Right, ironmanrecords.co.uk.
Okay.
And if you go into Google and type in Iron Man Records as 3 words rather than 2 or whatever, then you'll find it. But I mean, the website is constantly changing, constantly being updated.
Sure.
There's all sorts of information.
Because you've got your blog on there as well about your thoughts about things, haven't you, and things you get involved in, or things that you read and come across. So
yeah, every couple of years someone makes a mistake and asks me some questions about my views and opinions on everything.
Like now.
So if you look on the Iron Man website, there's a few articles that I've posted with my views and opinions, but you know, I warn you, they are my views and opinions. They're not the right or wrong answer for anything.
But it's nice to have an opinion and to be able to voice that. So thank you very much for coming down to Musoplex, and we'll see you again.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.